I gave you 2 shoes.
Well, good afternoon. How are you doing? Looks like we already have somebody from Iowa on the stream ready to go. So welcome. Glad you're with us. Hey, as you guys are joining in, go ahead and put in the comments where you are joining us from. Always love to see the different places that people can drop in to be a part of these with us. I'm going to actually start today with something a little bit different. We've been putting something up for our tribe members. There's a place on our tribe portal on our website where tribe members can submit dreams that we might possibly use for a Dream Lab episode. We've been filming some new Dream Labs I think they've just started coming out. So if you haven't seen the new Dream Labs, make sure to check them out. They're on our YouTube channel. Kind of a fun new format that we've done and trying to do the Dream Labs, providing a way for there to be some mentoring for dream interpretation. So we might use them for a dream lab, or we might use them for one of these lives that we'll get started with. So I'm going to start out with one of these dreams, but let me say hello to the people they're coming on first. Let's see, we've got Maryland, we've got Indianapolis. We have somebody from Nigeria. Welcome. I'm so glad that you were able to make it to one of the lives. That's amazing. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So I've got a dream here. Let me see. This is a nice short one. I've got 2 to choose from, and I'll just choose the shorter one. So it will be easier to jump in. And actually, I'm just going to answer this question before I jump into this dream that I have waiting for me here. Because this is a good question. What do you think about Dungeons and Dragons and Pokemon? So here's something that's interesting. I think it was about a year or two ago. I mean, I've been thinking about it for a little while, but with the resurgence of the popularity of Pokemon, I remembered a book that John Paul had written a number of years ago. I think he wrote it almost 20 years ago. It was called Buying and Selling the Souls of Our Children, and it was about Pokemon. It was going into what that was. You know, Pokemon is pocket monsters. They're little demons that you have that have different powers, and then you can trade them for stronger ones with stronger powers, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole point of the book was how this is teaching children that evil is good, and that there's a trading in spiritual powers that is available that has nothing to do with relationship with the Lord. And so he goes through the origins of it, from Magic the Gathering, and how that actually came out of Dungeons and Dragons, that there was a relationship between them and that whole connection. So quite interesting that you would ask this questions. We recently re-released it as an ebook. It's available. I think it's on our website for sure, but it might also be on Kindle, but I know for sure it's on our website available as an ebook. And I just wrote a new introduction for that so that people would realize why it is that we're bringing this back out, because it's such an important thing. We have given ourselves permission to touch evil, and there is a strong movement that is much bigger than just the spiritual arena, where we call evil good and where we call good evil. And the idea that there is a standard of righteousness is actually evil in the eyes of the world. But that is a trap that the enemy has created to keep people in bondage. And so understanding the roots of these things. Now, there is a bigger conversation on, is there ever a place for fantasy, for those kinds of stories? And If you've looked into things like C.S. Lewis and his work on fantasy, and some of the things, not just the fantasy stories that he wrote, but his understandings behind them and the reason for them. And then Tolkien, obviously, with the Lord of the Rings, and understanding that, and then how he uses magic within that. There's some real important keys in those things. Now, Tolkien had no desire to write an allegory of the Christian life. That was not his attempt. That was not the purpose of the things that he wrote. But in his writings, he did a really good job, and actually shows up in the writings even more so than in the movies, even though you can still find it in the movies, in celebrating virtue, celebrating humility, celebrating integrity and loyalty and faithfulness. And the celebration of these things is what allows those stories to be beneficial. But when a story celebrates evil, celebrates using something, rebellion, making fun of things, that is one of the issues with it. I didn't personally, I have not read through the Harry Potter stories myself, but I remember John Paul talking about having read through them, because he wanted to have a good answer. Like, why would you suggest that somebody doesn't read these? And the response is, it's not so much about the fact that there's magic in them, but the issue is the rebellion that's there, the lack of virtue that's there, the making fun of people that are different that's there. And then you have the witchcraft, and specifically the use of evil powers to accomplish good things, because you can't actually use evil powers to accomplish something that's truly good. So that's some thoughts. I know that that's a huge discussion, and we could spend a lot of time on that, but it relates to an important principle when it comes to discerning spiritual activity that is connected to dream interpretation. Because one of the ways that you discern a dream, whether or not it's from God or whether or not it's from the enemy, is the fruit of the dream. So looking at the tone, looking at the tenor of the dream. And it's not just whether or not something good or bad in our eyes happened within the dream, but the fruit. What was it that it caused? If it causes fear. Now, here's a question that you have to ask. Is that fear because somebody fears losing something that they actually need to lose? Or is that fear because it's a generalized fear? Is it fear because God is convicting somebody of something and they're afraid of actually stopping a behavior that they know is wrong? That there's a fear of there being a result, a consequence for the things that they're doing, because it's clear that there are consequences for the choices that we make. That would be very different than the generalized intimidation and fear. And whether or not there's virtues, if there's a dream that has using deceit and manipulation to get about a good result, then it becomes very clear that that dream is not from God, even if it comes with light and with color, because our God is not a God that uses manipulation to get his way. He's one that lays out things in front of people and allows them to make their own choices. He gives us free will to choose. He puts before us life and death, and we get to choose. He gives us the opportunity to follow him or not follow him. And we have the choice on whether or not to do that. And so looking at the fruit that it produces is really, really important. So when you think about things like that, so Dungeons and Dragons, I actually, I like to play video games. I don't play them a whole bunch. Sometimes I play them more, sometimes I play them less. Right now I'm playing them a little bit less. But one of the things that I'm very careful with the games that I play is I make sure that I do not do anything in the game that I would not do in waking life. I operate by the same standard of morality in the game that I would in waking life. So I'm not going to betray someone that is in the game because it's going to get me ahead, because that's actually violating something of righteousness that is there. And it's not about a salvation issue. It's about keeping my heart clean. It says in Hebrews that those that have a pure heart shall see God, and without a pure heart we will not see God. And so I want to be very careful, even with the entertainment that I allow myself to be involved in, that I'm keeping my heart clean, that I'm keeping my heart pure, because I want to see God. I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to have a revelation of the one that saved me, that paid the ultimate price for me to be in relationship with him. I don't want something, a choice that I would make for a temporary enjoyment, to remove that possibility of me having a deeper revelation of him right now. Now, that has nothing to do with whether or not I will see him for eternity, because that's a separate issue. This is about what we're doing right now and how it affects us. Galatians says this thing that we have forgotten in the church. It says, do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. This is Galatians chapter 6. Whatever you sow, you will also reap. If you sow to the spirit, you're going to reap life. If you sow to the flesh, you're going to reap death. We're thinking that we can just do whatever we want, play around in dark magics, play around even in fantasy, even in games, even in our entertainment, and we celebrate these things. If we play around with these things, we will reap the fruit of the things that we play around with. And to think that we're not going to reap it because we're under grace is deception. It's actually mocking God, because Galatians is clearly a book that's all about the grace of God and how we don't live under the law, but we live under grace. And under grace, there is sowing and reaping. And any message about grace that does not include sowing and reaping is not a biblical message. And so recognizing the importance of that, especially when it comes to spiritual things, is so key. So thank you for asking that question. I think that was a helpful discussion for us to have. Now let's jump into this dream. This dream is from Patty Crute. So Patty said this: I'm standing with my left arm up and elbow bent inward. I haven't even read this yet, so I'm reading it first time live with you guys, like I do with all the comments here. A hawk with a small creature in its mouth lands on the crook of my elbow. I was not scared. I felt at peace. Then the hawk's beak attached itself to my right pointer finger. I tried to gently shake my hand to see if the hawk would release, but it wouldn't. Although the hawk was securely fastened to my finger, it did not hurt me. So here's a couple things that's really fun with this dream. So one, left arm, right arm. Arm usually has to do with strength or ability. Right and left, in general, right is what you have faith for, left is what you're born to do. So that's a generalization, but it seems to play itself out pretty often in dreams, especially when it's talking about the right arm or the left arm, the right leg or the left leg, the right eye or the left eye. When it's a portion of our body, that holds out more often than when it's, say, turning to the right or turning to the left. There's more to that we could look at. But this is the left arm with the left elbow. And so here we have somebody that is holding up their left arm, and then a hawk comes and lands on their arm. And then it says it attached itself to the right pointer finger. So hawk grabbing hold of the right pointer finger. Now the finger is interesting. The finger is, the different fingers represent different things, but the pointer finger often will represent the prophetic gifting. Now, in our book, the Dream Elements book, which you can see behind me on the shelf there, not very clearly because everything's blurry, but the Dream Elements book, we talk about the different fingers and what each of the fingers represent. But the pointer finger usually represents the prophetic gifting because it's how we're pointing things out. Now, why a hawk? A hawk is an interesting creature. A hawk, it's a hunter, but it usually has, it's known for its good eyesight. Hawks will soar very much like eagles. They soar, and they have extremely good eyesight, and they can see a mouse moving in a field from a very high altitude distance, and swoop down to grab that mouse. So the idea of eyesight, of perspective, a hawk, the difference between a hawk and an eagle is an eagle generally is more solitary. Uh, but a hawk, you can actually train a hawk a lot easier than you can train an eagle. Throughout the history of humankind, we've trained hawks to help in our hunting. A little bit harder. It's possible to train eagles, so it is something, but it's a lot more common to train a hawk. And that would represent something that could be trained. So we're talking about the perspective, the ability to see at a difference, to be able to soar with the wind. So this is probably a prophetic intercessor, because there's a loyalty to the master, to the one that has trained it. So hawks will often represent prophetic intercession. And so there's a prophetic intercession. There's something that the dreamer, Patty, she was born to have this gift of prophetic intercession. She has the ability for it. It's sitting on her left arm, and it's grabbing hold of her faith in what she sees. So her current prophetic gifting, and she's starting to recognize how those are connected. The calling to intercession and the prophetic gifting, what she was born to do and what she has faith to do, are coming together and being held together in this experience that she's having. So that is a really fun dream, Patty. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now let's take a look at some of the dreams that you guys have put into our comments. UJ, I don't think I have seen your name recently, so let's see about your dream. Christina, my niece, said to me, "You need to turn up the volume." I looked at 3 TVs and I said, "They look okay to me." She then turned to Daniel, her husband, and he had to do something from the power station. Okay. So there's some interesting pieces that are here, because there's so many people that are involved. And one of the things to figure out what a dream means is figuring out who or what's the focus. And the best way to do that is to start by asking, where's the dreamer in the dream? So in this dream, where's the dreamer in the dream? Are they the center of the activity? Are they participating in the activity? Or are they just observing and watching everything happen? Well, they're clearly not observing. So the center of activity, my niece said to me, "You need to turn up the volume." And so the dreamer is being told to do something. The dreamer looks at the TVs, and the dreamer responds. And then she turned to her husband, to her husband Daniel, and he had to do something from the power station. So it seems like there's some kind of an interaction. It's almost like there's a participation, but it's really about the dreamer, and it's connecting some things for the dreamer and what they're seeing. And this, again, this is actually about, it's funny how we find these themes when we start doing dreams. That we just had a dream about a prophetic gifting, and here's a dream about a prophetic gifting. TVs, television. Just separate that out. Vision. TVs often talk about a prophetic gifting because we're telling a vision, telling what it is. And so the dreamer is being told to turn up the volume. So the vision that you have is not being communicated very well, but the dreamer couldn't see it. Looks at the 3 TVs. Well, there's 3 different things. It looks fine to me. I don't see why there's a need to turn up the volume. I'm getting it. But part of this is probably related to the dreamer's perspective. So you may not realize that you need to turn up the volume, that you need to clarify the vision that you have, but other people aren't receiving what it is that's going on. Now, Daniel having to do something from the power station. Um, this is probably relating to turning up the volume. And I wonder, so I wonder if Christine and Daniel are actually both metaphoric in this dream, not really about Christine and not really about Daniel, but that they're representing something. And I wonder if it has to do with their names. Christina, the roots is Christian, so someone that's Christ-like. So there's that connection that's there. So these are other believers that are not clearly hearing the vision that's being released. Daniel being a dreamer. So not really about the inherent meaning of the name, because the name itself means God is my judge. Dan is judge. El is God. So Danielle is or Daniel is God is my judge. That doesn't fit this at all. But Daniel was a dreamer, was someone that had encounters with God, and that there was a power station. There's something that needs to be increased. There's a power that needs to be increased. There's a volume that needs to be increased. Here, this is letting the dreamer know that there's a clarity of the vision that you've been given that needs to be given, because people are not hearing as well as what you think that they are. But the answer is actually an increase of power. And so begin to pray for the Lord to begin to increase power, especially in your prophetic gifting, the dreams and the visions that you have, so that the message can come across, the television can be heard more clearly by others. So that's a fun one. There's so much metaphor that was in that dream. That is really neat. Let's see. There we are. KL. Looks like my picture dropped out a little bit. My internet is a little bit slow. So hopefully you guys are hearing this well enough. But this is what KL wrote. Kanye West at a threshold of a door with a man next to him. He heard a sound no one else did but me. It was faint at first, but when I brought him out, it was loud rock music. Left, but he had my name card. Okay, now that's interesting. Few different pieces. So Kanye West, musician. There's there's been a whole story. What part of Kanye West's story is this about? Is it actually about Kanye West? It seems like it's more about the dreamer than Kanye West. But what would Kanye West represent to the dreamer? That would be a question. And so the best way for you to figure out what that would be is to ask yourself as the dreamer. So KL, you're asking yourself, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Kanye West? The very first thing that comes to mind, that immediate sense. Some people are going to be thinking about, maybe his past. Some people be thinking about the whole time where he was doing these church services basically as his concerts. And then some people be thinking about, some of the stuff that's happened more recently where he's kind of changed his mind on some of that stuff, or at least presumably. I haven't been watching the whole dynamic very well, so I don't know the actual story of what's there. Though that's what I've heard, that he's kind of turned back on some of the things that he was saying that he believes. So what part of that is there something that's there? I mean, there's clearly influence. There's clearly a sound that's being released. There's a cultural influence that is there. But it's related to the sound, and that's what's important. So whatever Kanye represents to you, that is releasing a sound that not a lot of people are hearing. You're hearing. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I brought him out, it was loud rock music. So you're helping to bring this cultural influence into the sound that you're hearing. There's something that's faint. You're hearing the echo of it. but you're going to make it more prominent so that it can be more easily heard. Now, Kanye West doesn't do rock music, right? His style of music is different. So it's different. It's a different sound. So the culture is going this way, and they have a particular sound, but what's being released is a different sound. And the question that I have for you as the dreamer is which do you identify with more? Do you identify more with the rap of the R&B that like Kanye would be known for, or do you identify more with rock? Like what would be your personal preference? Because it might be about that. If you don't like rock music, that's not your preference. No, I much prefer the rap, or I'd much prefer the R&B, or maybe, I don't know, jazz or country or whatever it would be that you would represent. If you would represent, if you would recognize or appreciate something different, that's key. You can tell, like, I'm talking through the pieces of this dream because I don't have clear revelation on what the dream means. Like, I can see the pieces and the pieces are making sense. And I know the questions to ask, but I'm not getting the revelation as to answers of those questions. So hopefully the dreamer is getting the revelation when the questions are being asked, because that will help to clarify. And sometimes as an interpreter, that's what happens. You don't get the full import. Like, I can see the basic principle that's here, but clearly there's something that there's some specifics that have not been revealed to me that are going to make this make sense to the dreamer. And that's one of the keys, because the point of dream interpretation is not that the interpreter understands the dream, but the dreamer understands the dream. And sometimes your role is just to help them ask the right questions so that they can discover it. Sometimes you get it and you get to share the interpretation, and that's always a lot of fun. But sometimes you don't get all the pieces and you just get to help the other person discover it by asking those questions. Here's the other piece. When it's your dream, this is also very helpful, because sometimes maybe you're not quite sure what to do with it. You're not quite sure what the dream means. It's your dream. But if you can remember the right questions, you're more likely to be able to discover the intent that God had when he gave you the dream, if the dream is from God. We're assuming that we're talking about interpreting dreams from God. So that is a piece. There's something, that there's a sound that you have heard that you're going to bring a significant influence or a group into the experience of that sound. And they may not be able to hold on to it, but because you brought them into that experience, they're going to remember who you were. He kept your name card. They're going to remember who you were. So there's a group of people that you're going to bring into an experience of a sound. I feel like I might have just fallen into the revelation of that particular dream there. I know there's some more clarity. What's the group? Kanye West. What does that actually represent? What is the sound? That piece. But the dream itself, dreamer, you're going to bring people into an experience, make it louder, of a sound that you're heard. And they may not stay in that place, but they will remember who you were because of what you did. So that's fun. I like that. Winda, here is your dream. I asked husband to the car so we could leave. Turned into a child when he got in. I told him, "You're not the man I married." As we drove off, my ex showed up, watched us from the church steps. Okay. So, trying to find the right way of communicating this. This dream is what we call a self-conditioned dream. This is showing you what's going on in your own heart. Well, no, I say that. I think I said that too clearly. Let me back up and share it this way. It is either showing you what's going on in your own heart. And as soon as I share the interpretation, you'll be able to recognize, yeah, yeah, I've been thinking that. Or no, I don't think that. Or it's a warning that you could start thinking this. So one or the other. So if it's current, then it's helping you to recognize it. Hey, this is what's going on. And then you ask, whenever you recognize something about yourself, you always want to ask the Lord, well, Lord, what do you think about that? What's your perspective on that? And getting that perspective, because just because we're experiencing something or thinking something doesn't mean that the Lord agrees with it. And just because it shows up in our dreams, it doesn't mean that God is agreeing with it. Sometimes he's just putting a mirror in front of us so that we can see, or letting us see a potential. So basically what this dream is saying is that you're wanting to move from the place that you're at in your relationship with your husband, because you're seeing some childish tendencies, or you're feeling like he's acting childish in some ways. And it doesn't feel like the same person that you married. The things that that attracted you to him in the first place, you're not experiencing. Now, is this something in the future and you're being warned so that you can protect your heart against that? Or are you being told this so that you can see that this is what's going on in your heart, so that you can be honest with it and then take it to the Lord and respond to that? That's the question that you have to ask, and that's going to be between you and the Lord. Um, this would be a great one to bring to someone that is really mature in the things of the Spirit, maybe a mentor, a pastor, somebody that you would trust, and talk through this and get some advice on how to respond to this, because this can, well, the revelation that's there can really help you if you pay attention to it. All right, so I asked God if this person, future husband, was the right one. Um, so that's not about your current husband, but somebody that you're thinking that might be your husband in the future. Now you've got to ask the question, is this, so I was just seeing some comments that the dreamer had put in while I was sharing that. I didn't see them live while I was talking. So now all of a sudden that helps. Now your question is, um, are you seeing some things about this person? There's some childish tendencies that you have not recognized, and this is a warning. Or is this fear that's creeping in, thinking that this person is not really who I think that they are? So asking the Lord, is this true? Is this you warning me of what is to come? Or is this accusation? And so the question, I mean, one of the ways to discern that is the feeling that you had when you first woke up. That just that initial feeling, like in the dream. Um, what were the emotions that were there when you first woke up? What were the emotions that you had? And don't have to share this on the comments. This is just for your own processing. If you had this, um, ooh, I knew that, then that probably is that actually your soul that is picking some stuff up, or is that the Lord letting you know, hey, pay attention to what you're thinking? And then that's a question that you've got to ask. And again, exact same thing, because one way that this is either a self-conditioned dream or this is a warning dream. The fruit of it, like just looking at this dream in itself, it seems to be pointing out something not positive about this other person. Now, the question is it accurate or is it false accusation? So, is it a warning and wisdom for you, or is it accusation, condemnation from the enemy? And that right there, that you're going to need some really wise counsel from someone that is mature, that has good discernment, and preferably somebody that knows both of you. So hopefully you've got a group of people that would know both of you, and you would be able to talk this through and be able to discern, is this accurate or is this inaccurate? Is this something trying to hinder me from something that's good that God wants, or is this a warning and it's letting me know that I shouldn't go in this direction? And that's going to come from that wise counsel and from observation. And but if you're feeling that it's a warning, do you have a good reason to believe that? Do you actually have activity that you can point to? And if you don't, then you've got a question, and that's where you need that counsel, where you need somebody to reflect back to you to help you discern what's in your own heart, so that you're clear. We're actually, I just got to look at this yesterday. We've got a new book that's coming out soon. I just got the first proof of it. We're having to do a couple little adjustments to some of the design, but it'll be coming out in the next month or so. And it's called Discerning Prophecies: How to Respond to the things that discerning and responding to prophecies. Yeah, how do you know what to do with what God is telling you? And we talk about discerning, how to discern whether or not it's from God or not from God, but then also how to work with spiritual directors, pastors, and leaders to discern and respond to revelation, so that your application of that revelation is helpful and healthy. So that'll be very helpful for some of you. Obviously, we'll let you know more when that comes out. Make sure that we let you know that it's available. Okay, so here's a fun one. TJ, dream 3 in 3 weeks. So you've had the same dream 3 different times over 3 different weeks. In a dream, I hear knocking on a door, no visual. So just the sound of someone knocking on the door. This is an invitation from the Lord. This is Revelation chapter 3. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If you open to me, I will come into you. There is an invitation right now, 3 times in 3 weeks. So it's now thing. It's been repeated because it's a timely issue. This is not something that's coming later. This is right now. There's an invitation for you to respond. The Lord is knocking on the door for greater intimacy. And if you will respond to him, turn and open up the door, you will find yourself growing in intimacy with him. But if you choose to, it's just too difficult to set aside that time, you'll go looking for him and you won't be able to find him. Remember in the Song of Songs, the bride that hears the sound of the lover knocking on the door, but I mean, it's inconvenient. I already washed my feet and I've got to get my robe. And I don't know if I really want to do it. And she delayed and she waited. And then finally her heart stirred her. So she finally got herself up. But when she went to the door, her beloved had already left. And she went searching for him and couldn't find him. So this is the time, place in the Psalms, it says, seek me while I may be found by you. There are times and seasons that the Lord sets where it is easier to encounter him. And you've just been told that you're in one of those seasons. Your seeking after him and spending time with him is going to bear more fruit in this season than in many other seasons of your life. So respond to this invitation because he is knocking at your door. That is awesome. That is really, really cool. All right. LM. I had 2 dreams with alligators in my nostril. Okay. It's kind of hard for that to happen. Those things are big and the nostril's small, but it's dreams. That's how it works in dreams. I love dreams that way. I was inside of a bathroom in both. One dream, the gator didn't slide down, but the second dream it did. I was looking at the gators in a mirror in a bathroom. So here's a few things. A bathroom is usually it's a place of cleansing. So it talks about how we get healed or how we get cleansed from from different situations. And then what's going on in the bathroom tells us something about that. Your nostrils talk about your discernment, your ability to discern. The first thing, if you want to know if your milk is good, is you smell it, right? We smell fruit, we smell things to figure out, ooh, that smells fishy. It's that idea of discernment. And actually, even in the Hebrew, the word Jericho means to be of quick discernment or to be fragrant. So there's a connection between fragrance and discernment, even in the Hebrew. So nostrils, discernment. A gator, an alligator. An alligator usually represents slander or gossip because they've got a really big mouth. Um, and once you let it open, it's dangerous. You can keep it closed, but it's really hard to close it once it's open, and it's really hard to hold it open. So you've got to keep it closed because once it opens, it's hard to let go of it. So a big mouth and a long tail, slander, gossip. You're in the bathroom, so there's an issue that needs to, and you see it coming out of you. The first one, you just see that it's there. The second one, you see it coming out. Your discernment has been affected by the gossip and the slander that you have heard, the things that other people are saying about situations or people, and it has affected your discernment. You're being shown that because that needs to be removed for your discernment to be clear again. So pay attention to the things that you're paying attention to, because slander and gossip, other people's story of what they experienced with someone else, will ruin your discernment. So that's a great word for every single one of us. We are in a season right now where we're moving towards an election here in the United States. In the next 4 months, we're going to be hearing an awful lot. And one of the things that is really important is, in everything that's going on, not pay attention to the things that your ears hear, but to pay attention to what the Lord is saying, paying attention to the actual issues that are going on, and not allowing your heart to get caught up in the slander and the vitriol as it comes. That when those things happen, it's going to affect everything. It's going to affect your discernment. I had this story when I was working at the bank. I was a financial advisor. It's one of the best jobs that I ever had. I was doing well. I was doing well financially. I loved the job. I loved working with people, getting to know people's stories. And just there's so much about that job that was great. I mean, I had decent hours, even though I was 100% commissions. I was number 5 in the country for my particular position, so I had a lot of favor from the Lord. It was just so much. It was going good. But one of the people that I was working with, she complained a lot. She complained about the job, the things they were asking, the processes that we had to do, which, to me, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just, it's just part of the job. There's requirements, there's expectations. When somebody is giving you a paycheck, they're going to have expectations for your performance and your behavior. Like, that's just normal. Just do it. It's not a big deal. As long as it's not breaking the law, who cares? They're going to pay my paycheck. I'm going to do what they say. Like that. That was even my perspective then. That was my perspective that I had. But I didn't want to hurt my friend's feelings. And she was kind of my partner. And so I would listen to her complaints. Well, over a period of time, I started feeling that same thing that she felt about the job. I started being upset. I was bothered that they would ask so much of us, that they would expect that of us. Like, aren't we doing good enough without that? Aren't we, like, just look at the performance. Aren't we doing well enough without having to jump through all these hoops? And that kind of that same offense that was in her heart, it started to get into my heart because I would listen to her complaints about this job. And I ended up leaving that job early before I needed to. I was getting ready to move to New Hampshire, so I was leaving the job, but I left it a couple months before I needed to, about 4 months before I needed to, and went to work for another company, and it was not nearly as was not a good fit for me. Didn't work as well financially. I mean, there's so many different things. Like it was completely because I had listened to somebody else slandering a situation. I had taken on their slander, and it changed my heart. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33 says, "Do not be deceived. Bad communications spoils useful habits." That's the King James Version. Bad company spoils useful morals, another one says. The company that we keep affects our behavior. And if we listen to the communication, evil communication, someone talking badly, putting someone down, it's going to cause us to think that way about that person. We have to be very careful with what we allow ourselves to pay attention to, because it will spoil our discernment. So I think that dream, LM, thank you for sharing that one. I'm glad. I think it's going to be helpful for you to pay attention to, but I think that's a word for every single one of us. We need to be paying attention to the things that we will listen to, and we do not want to be a participator in gossip. We talk about this in the Art of Hearing God. The rabbis used to call gossip the third tongue because it destroys the person talking, it destroys the person being talked to, and it destroys the person being talked about. Gossip is never good for any reason. And there's an old adage says everybody knows where the garbage dump is. If you find that people keep on coming to you with gossip and keep on coming to you and talking badly about other people, the only reason they're doing it is because you're listening. And if you will ask them to stop, you will find yourself not listening to that, and it will be so much easier to steward your heart. I mean, it's been a few years now, but I can't remember how long ago. It was 12 years ago, 8 years ago. Just everything that was going on the political scene at the time. I just was so, I would find myself on social media, and it would take me, I'd be looking at stuff and listen, this person said this and this person did this. And I'd get off of social media, I'd get off like the news feed, and it would take me a few minutes, sometimes 15, 20 minutes, just to steward my heart and to bring it back into a place of peace. Because I was upset over the stuff that was happening. I mean, can you believe that they're doing that? Like, and that thing just kept on rising up. And I realized I'm spending so much time trying to steward my heart because I'm paying attention to someone else's anger, someone else's bitterness, someone else's story, and I can't do anything about it. Now, there's a difference between knowing where someone stands on issues so that you can vote well. That's different than the vitriol that comes talking about someone's behavior, whether someone can think well or not think well, what someone might have said or didn't say. Where do they stand on the issues? That's what we need to remember when it comes to, I mean, here in America, but no matter where you're at, when it comes to the political thing, when it comes to people, when it comes to people being exposed. Are we a part of the solution? If we're not, let's not be a part of the problem. Because if it's not ours, we need to keep our mouth off of it. I think it's Psalm 131. Actually, I'm going to see if I can just pull it up on my Bible real quick, because it's one that I've been stuck with. It's been my meditation. I think we all Man, if we could get this, it's just 3 verses. I'm just gonna read this, and this is how we'll end today. But it's so important for us to get, "Oh Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me, but I have calmed and quieted my soul like a winged child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore." Yeah, there's so much going on in this world, and most of it we can't do anything about, but we can do something about what my hands do, what my mouth does, what my eyes look like. I can control myself. I can't change the whole world. But you know what? When I respond to the Lord to the best of my ability, when I keep my soul in that place of quiet and trust, I actually do change the world. I release a calming and healing presence to everybody around me. I release a witness to what's possible when someone responds to the Lord. I keep my trust on Him. I trust in my God's ability to save more than the enemy's ability to disrupt. And I hold it there. Now, there's a place for intercession. There's a place for the burden of the Lord, but there's a difference between the burden of the soul and the burden of the Lord. There's a difference between offense of heart and the Spirit rising up saying, "I'm going to stand for righteousness." And learning to discern the difference between the soul and the spirit. It's the most important thing we will ever do as followers of Jesus. It is maturity, separating out the difference between the soul and the spirit, being led by the Spirit and not being led by the soul. And when we find that something is bearing bad fruit, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or Pokemon, like we started talking, or whether it is political conversations, if it's bearing bad fruit, we recognize it's a bad root, because good fruit comes from good trees. A good tree does not bear bad fruit. If the fruit is good, the tree is good. If the fruit is bad, the tree is bad. Maybe there's another way you can get that information. I remember a young lady contacted me a number of years ago. She was part of our church, and recently married, just had a baby, and just the stress of this new child that she is responsible for. And she was listening to a particular teacher that talked a lot about the end times, and she was just anxious and fearful and being tormented with how bad everything was getting and how bad everything was going to get. And my suggestion was not to listen to that teacher anymore, because whenever she listened to that teacher, all this anxiety would come. So it's not ignoring the issues, but how is the conversation coming? We need to pay attention to those things. Discernment is so essential for our time, for right now. And for every time, it's always essential. But now, there's never a time like now. You can't change yesterday and the discernment that was needed yesterday. And you can't do anything about tomorrow and the discernment that's needed tomorrow. But right now, you can. And what you do now actually determines what you'll be doing in the future. So developing the habit now is key. Grow your spirit. Learn how to recognize when it's just your soul. Learn how to recognize when it's actually the Spirit. Respond to the Spirit. Don't respond to the soul. This is key. This should be Christianity 101. It's one of the first things that we teach in the Art of Hearing God. It's the foundation for all the stuff that we teach in our online classroom. It's so essential for us to get. So I want to encourage you, learn how to grow your spirit and how to bring your soul into submission. Because as you do that, you're going to find yourself growing. You're going to find yourself hearing God more and more and more. You're going to find yourself at a place of peace. And it's the peace that's the potting soil of revelation, like John Paul always said. It's developing peace in our lives that allows us to hear God consistently. And that's where we need to be as a people. So bless you. The Lord be with you. Keep dreaming. Next month, we'll be back. We'll be doing some more dreams. And yeah, until then, take care. Bless you guys.